My brother texted, "Mom's funeral is for blood relatives, don't come." So I said nothing and let him discover I'm the only one named in her will. Before we continue, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? Subscribe, say hi, and be part of our growing family. The notification lit up my phone at 2:47 a.m. on March 14th. I remember the exact time because my trembling hands couldn't stop screenshotting it. Malik, don't even think about showing up to Mom's funeral. This is for blood relatives only. You lost that right years ago. I stared at those words for what felt like forever. My mouth went dry. Blood relatives? I'm their blood. I'm Eileen Mitchell, their daughter, their sister, their family. But apparently none of that mattered anymore. Let me back up. My mother, Loretta Mitchell, had passed away 2 days earlier after a sudden heart attack. She was only 62. The entire world felt like it was moving in slow motion, and my family, my actual family, couldn't even give me 48 hours before they started weaponizing my grief. I'd been estranged from them for nearly 4 years. Not by choice. By necessity. My older brother Malik had always been difficult, but he became downright cruel after I cut contact with him. Dad had taken his side. They both said I was too sensitive, ungrateful, and making things up. Mom had tried to stay neutral, which was the saddest part. She was caught between her children, choosing silence over truth. That silence had cost us 4 years of real connection. But I'd made peace with that distance. I'd been in therapy, healing, building a life separate from their toxicity. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Until that text. Until Malik decided my grief wasn't legitimate enough for their funeral. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard. Instead, I did something strategic. Something that would change everything. I forwarded the text to an email address I'd been given 3 weeks earlier. One attached to an estate document that had arrived at my door. Mom's will was about to become very interesting. 3 weeks before her heart attack, I'd received a certified letter. No explanation. Just an envelope with my name in Mom's handwriting, and inside, papers from her attorney. I still remember sitting on my bed, hands shaking, reading my mother's final wishes. She'd written a note attached to the legal document. One note. Just one. It said, "Eileen, I'm sorry I couldn't say this out loud. I hope you can forgive me. Mom." She'd cut Malik out of her will completely. Not reduced his share. Not left him something symbolic. Nothing. Everything went to me. The house. The savings. Her jewelry. Her. All of it. When the lawyer, Mr. Hensworth, had explained it to me over the phone, I'd actually felt guilty. "Are you certain she meant this?" I'd asked. "Your mother was very clear," he'd said. "She came in person, we documented everything, and she was mentally sound." This was deliberate. But I'd never mentioned it to anyone. It felt wrong somehow, like I'd been given a secret weapon I shouldn't carry. I'd planned to wait until after the funeral, to give everyone time to grieve, and then, if they came at me with accusations, I'd have proof that Mom had made her own choice. What I didn't expect was for them to make this so easy. What I didn't know was that Mom had left something else behind. When I forwarded Malik's text to the lawyer that night, my phone rang within 20 minutes. It was Mr. Hensworth. "Ms. Mitchell? I need to tell you something. Your mother left specific instructions to be delivered to certain family members only after the will reading. Given this text message and the timing, I think you need to understand what's about to happen." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Your mother knew," he said quietly. "She knew who would honor her wishes and who would betray you. She anticipated this exact scenario." I felt something shift inside me. Something between rage and vindication. "Tell me everything," I whispered into the phone. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday. I showed up anyway. I know what Malik's text said. I knew I wasn't wanted. I also knew my mother would have wanted me there, and his text had proven one crucial thing. He was thinking about me at her funeral instead of grieving her. That spoke volumes. I walked into Mt. Zion Baptist Church wearing a black dress Mom always loved on me. The second Malik saw me, his face turned the color of old brick. He actually stood up from the front pew. "You have got to be kidding me," he said loud enough that people turned around. "This is unbelievable." Dad was beside him, older now, grayer. He wouldn't look at me. My Aunt Hilda gasped. The entire church was watching. Mom's best friend, Mrs. Washington, who'd been sitting nearby, stood up too. "Malik Mitchell, that is your sister. Your blood. And you're going to disrespect her at your mother's funeral? Loretta would be ashamed of you right now." Malik's wife, Roxanne, grabbed his arm. She looked uncomfortable. "That was interesting." "She doesn't belong here," Malik hissed at me. "You made your choice 4 years ago." "I made a choice to protect myself," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised me. "From you." The church went silent. I walked past them all and sat 3 rows back. I cried through the entire service, but not the kind of cry Malik probably expected. These weren't tears of pain. They were the tears of someone finally understanding why her mother had felt the need to leave her a secret. During the eulogy, Malik painted himself as the devoted son. He talked about how much he'd done for Mom. He didn't mention that he'd borrowed $8,000 from her last year and never paid it back. He didn't mention that Mom had confided in me once during a coded phone call, that he made her feel obligated and small. When it came time for people to share memories, I raised my hand. The pastor looked surprised, so did Malik. "I remember," I said, standing slowly, "the night before I went no contact. Mom and I sat on the back porch and she said, 'Baby, sometimes the people who hurt us most are the people who should love us best.'" I didn't understand what she meant then. But I was 14 when Malik started making me uncomfortable. And I was 15 when I told Mom, and she told me I was misremembering. I understand now. I sat down. The funeral home became deathly quiet. Roxanne's eyes went wide. Aunt Hilda's mouth fell open. Malik stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. "You're a liar," he shouted. But the damage was done. And it was only the beginning. The thing about family secrets is that they have a way of finding light. I'd been 11 years old, fresh out of elementary school, when Malik, then 17, had started what I thought were special moments between us. They weren't. They were grooming, plain and simple. I didn't have the vocabulary for it then. I just knew that his behavior made me feel sick and small, and that when I told my mother, she'd said, "Baby, Malik's going through something. Don't make it weird. Boys that age are confused. You just misunderstood his intentions." I'd believed her. I'd internalized the blame. I'd spent years thinking I was the problem. It wasn't until I was in college that a counselor helped me understand what had happened. By then Malik had moved on, gotten married to Roxanne, started his corporate job, became the successful Mitchell. And I'd learned the hard way that naming trauma in front of people is a form of power he'd never anticipated me having. The funeral service ended at noon. By 6 p.m. that evening my phone was exploding. My Aunt Hilda called first. "Baby, is what you said true?" Her voice was shaking. "Yes," I said. There was a long silence. Then, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't your mother tell me?" "She didn't believe me," I said. "I was 11, Hilda. Who would believe an 11-year-old over their precious son?" My cousin Deshawn texted, "Yo, is this for real? Because Roxanne just kicked Malik out of the house. She's saying he did something to her sister too. Years ago." My hands went cold. Roxanne had kicked him out? On the day of the funeral? Then Mr. Hensworth called again. "Ms. Mitchell, I need to read you something your mother left in a sealed envelope." It's time. My mother's voice came through that letter like a ghost determined to finally be heard. To my family, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I couldn't tell you this while I was alive because I was a coward. Those were the first words of Mom's letter. I read it 3 times before the words actually sank in. I knew what Malik did to Eileen. She told me when she was 11 years old and I didn't protect her. I told her she was misremembering. I told her to stop making it weird. I chose to keep peace in my house instead of protecting my daughter, and it cost me everything. Cost me Eileen. She went no contact 4 years ago because I continued to enable him. She came to me crying and asked me to understand her position, and I chose him anyway. When she finally cut us off, I finally woke up. I spent those 4 years in therapy understanding what I'd done. Understanding that my inability to face what Malik was meant that I'd failed Eileen in the most fundamental way a mother can fail. But I was too ashamed to reach out. I didn't know how to fix what I'd broken. So instead I'm doing this through my will. Eileen, I'm leaving you everything. Not to pay you off. No amount of money could do that. But so you know, I finally believe you. I finally protect you. Even if it's from beyond. To Malik, you are not my son in the way that matters. You forfeited that right when you hurt your sister and I enabled it. I'm leaving you one thing, the truth. Use it to get help. To everyone else, I love you, but Eileen is my priority in death in a way I should have made her my priority in life. I couldn't breathe when I finished reading. I called the lawyer back immediately. How long have you had this? 3 weeks, Mr. Hensworth said. Your mother was very specific about when it should be delivered. She wanted to see how your family would respond to her death without knowing about the will. She wanted to know who would reveal their true character. And they did exactly as she predicted. The funeral was at noon. By 6 a.m. the next morning, the story had spread through our entire church community. By lunchtime it was through the whole extended family. My mother, gentle, conflict-avoidant Loretta Mitchell, had publicly called out her son's abuse and cut him off financially. She'd also, I would later learn, set up a trust for me managed by Mr. Hensworth, specifically designed to protect my inheritance from any legal challenges Malik might try to mount. My mother had loved me enough to be brave after death. Malik showed up at my apartment on Sunday night. I didn't let him in. We talked through the door and honestly, that was strategic. Witnesses. My landlord, Mrs. Pierce, saw him there. My downstairs neighbor heard him yelling. You destroyed our family, he said, his voice carrying through the building. You lied at the funeral. You got people believing your twisted story. I told the truth, I said through the door. You're just upset that people actually believe me now. That letter isn't real, he spat. You had someone forge it. You manipulated Mom when she was sick. You've been planning this the whole time. I didn't speak to Mom in 4 years, I said calmly. She reached out to me exactly once in that time. Do you know what she said? He didn't respond. She said she was sorry. He said she believed me. And she said she was getting professional help because what she did to me by choosing you had broken her. I heard him flinch. She did this on her own, Malik. Because deep down, even the people who failed us initially will sometimes choose us in the end. The house is mine, he said. Half of it belongs to me regardless. I'll fight it in court. You can try, I said. Mr. Hensworth has documentation of you borrowing $8,000 from her that you never repaid. Coercion, actually, you told her you'd hurt yourself if she didn't help you. He also has her diary entries from the therapy sessions where she discussed what you did to me and why she was reconsidering your inheritance. And he has Roxanne ready to testify about what you did to her sister, which mirrors the pattern of behavior exactly. The hallway went quiet. You think you've won, he said finally. But you're going to regret this. Everyone's going to know what a manipulative bitch you are. That's when the door to Mrs. Pierce's apartment opened. I call police, Mrs. Pierce said firmly. You leave now or I call. Malik's face cycled through surprise, rage, and then something close to defeat. He left without another word. But I knew this wasn't over. The will reading was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I went into that lawyer's office prepared for war. What I found instead was vindication. Mr. Hensworth laid out the documents with the precision of someone who'd handled hundreds of these cases. Mom's house, paid off, valued at $340,000, went to me. Her savings account, $127,000, went to me. Her car, her jewelry, her paintings. All of it went to me. Malik received his name in a legal document stating, I leave nothing to my son Malik Mitchell as he has chosen a path of harm and I choose not to enable it further. The house had been the biggest surprise. That was the space where everything had started. That was the place where I'd been hurt and not believed. And now it was mine. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Your mother took the liberty of updating her will 6 months ago, Mr. Hensworth explained. She also left some personal items to your father and aunt, but Malik's removal was comprehensive. Can he challenge it? I asked, though I already knew the answer. He can try, the lawyer said. But he won't succeed. Your mother's mental competency was evaluated by 2 independent physicians. She was clear about her reasoning. And most importantly, he slid a document across the desk. She documented everything. The abuse you experienced. Her failure to protect you. Her reconciliation with that failure. Her decision to make this right in the only way she could. I read Mom's handwriting again, tears blurring the page. To anyone challenging this will, you're challenging the last act of protection a mother can offer her child. I'm protecting Eileen the way I should have protected her from the beginning. This is non-negotiable. Malik challenged it anyway. The case went to court exactly 4 months later. Malik's attorney argued that Mom was suffering from guilt-induced mental instability, and that her will didn't represent her true intentions. They produced character witnesses who said Mom was emotionally fragile. They tried to paint her love for me as a late-life obsession born from guilt rather than genuine belief. It didn't matter. The judge, a woman in her 50s named Judge Patricia Richardson, listened to everything. Then she said something that echoed through the courtroom and probably through Malik's soul. This will represent a mother's choice to finally protect her child. That choice is not the result of mental illness. It's the result of moral clarity. This will stands. Malik stood up so fast he knocked over his chair again. He glared at me across the courtroom with a look of pure hatred. And I just smiled. Because I finally understood something my mother had learned in her therapy. Protecting yourself isn't cruel. It's necessary. After the court ruling, the family fractured in ways that were almost beautiful to witness. Roxanne filed for divorce from Malik. Turns out she'd been doing her own investigating after my funeral revelation. She discovered that the confusion Malik had experienced at 17 had never actually resolved. There was an incident with her younger sister in 2015. Another with a family friend's daughter in 2018. A pattern so clear that even Malik couldn't deny it anymore, though he certainly tried. She took custody of their 2 kids and moved back with her parents in Atlanta. Dad came to see me exactly 1 week after the court ruling. I almost didn't let him in. But something about seeing him standing in my hallway, older, smaller than I remembered, looking genuinely ashamed, made me open the door. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I'm so sorry, Eileen. For all of it. For not believing you. For choosing him. For letting you become a stranger. I'd spent 4 years imagining this moment. I'd pictured myself cold, unmoved, perfectly protected. Dad, I felt sad. For him. For us. Why are you here? I asked. Because your mother woke me up. Even dead, she's still doing the work we should have done alive. He looked at me with wet eyes. And because my daughter shouldn't be a stranger to me. We sat on my couch for 3 hours. He told me about his own trauma. His father had been abusive and he'd never processed it properly, so he'd repeated the pattern with Malik. He explained that when I'd told Mom about Malik, it had triggered his own shame about his failures as a father, and instead of confronting it, he'd run from it. He'd made me the problem so he didn't have to see himself. That's not an excuse, he said. I'm not excusing it. I'm just explaining it. I know, I said. Can you forgive me? I didn't answer right away. Forgiveness wasn't something I could just hand over, even to my own father. Can I have time? I asked instead. You can have whatever you need, he said. I'm not going anywhere this time. He meant it. The first thing I did was sell my apartment. The second thing I did was move into my mother's house. Our house technically. But it had never felt like mine until that moment. Walking through those rooms was like walking through time. The kitchen where Mom used to make her famous peach cobbler. The living room where Malik first hurt me. The hallway where I'd cried telling her the truth. Every space was loaded with memory and pain, and after the inheritance, something new. Possibility. I didn't keep it as a memorial or anything macabre like that. I renovated it. I repainted those walls. I tore out the carpet in the living room and put in beautiful hardwood. I reclaimed the space, room by room, making it mine instead of haunted. I also did something that surprised people. I started a foundation. Using part of the inheritance, I established the Loretta Mitchell Safe Space Initiative, a non-profit focused on supporting survivors of childhood sexual abuse, specifically in cases where families had failed to protect them. We provided counseling, legal resources, and community support. The first person I hired was a woman named Carmen who'd experienced something similar to me at age 13. Her family had blamed her. She'd internalized the shame for 20 years before finding healing in her 50s. Nobody should wait that long, I told her at her job interview. And nobody should have to fight their family on top of fighting their trauma. She cried when I offered her the position. The foundation became my purpose. It became the thing that transformed my pain into protection for others. Every dollar I put into it was a middle finger to Malik and everyone who'd prioritized his comfort over my safety. By the end of the first year, we'd served over 200 survivors. By the end of the second year, we'd expanded to 3 branches across the state. This was what generational healing looked like. This was what happened when you stopped accepting the crumbs of love that toxic people offered and instead built something real. Malik spiraled. I didn't want to know about it, but somehow I found out anyway. Information leaked through family networks, through mutual acquaintances, through the inevitable grapevine that connects us all despite our best efforts to sever the connection. He lost his job at the corporate firm. Apparently, when his arrest came down, yes, arrests plural, his company's reputation couldn't afford to keep him on. The charges never went to trial because he took a plea deal. 3 years probation, mandatory therapy, and registration as a sex offender. He moved back in with Dad. Dad told me about it when I'd finally let him deeper back into my life. We were having dinner at my house, the house that used to be our family's house, and he looked exhausted. He's struggling, Dad said. Really struggling. He's in therapy finally, but I don't know if he's going to make it through this. Make it through what? I asked. This awareness. This accountability. I didn't say what I was thinking. That accountability was supposed to be hard. That comfort was something predators didn't deserve. But something shifted in me when I realized that. The anger that had been fueling me for so long, The righteous rage that had powered my fight. It started to feel heavy instead of energizing. I didn't forgive Malik. I want to be clear about that. I never would. But I stopped needing him to suffer as proof of my own healing. That was when I knew I was actually getting better. Roxanne reached out to me 4 months after the court hearing. We met at a coffee shop in neutral territory, and I have to admit I was nervous. She'd been the beneficiary of Malik's protection. She'd been the wife who got to look the other way for years. "I want to apologize," she said before we'd even ordered. "For staying. For not asking questions. For everything. You were caught in it too," I said, surprising myself with the compassion in my voice. "I knew though," she said. "Deep down I knew. There were too many signs. The way he talked about women. The comments he made. The anger that came out of nowhere. I told myself I was reading into things because I didn't want to lose my marriage, my stability, my life as I knew it." "That's human," I said. "It's complicity," she corrected. "And I'm trying to be better about that." She'd gotten a therapist. She was working through her own trauma. Not the abuse I'd endured, but the betrayal of discovering she'd been married to someone who could hurt children. She was rebuilding her relationship with her sister, who was finally in her own healing journey. "I brought something for you," she said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a letter. From her sister. A girl who'd been 17 when Malik hurt her. A girl who'd been gaslit just like I had. A girl who'd spent 5 years thinking it was her fault. The letter thanked me. It said that watching me take my power back had given her permission to do the same. It said that my inheritance story had shown her that her trauma mattered, that her truth was worth fighting for. "She's starting her own support group at her church," Roxanne told me. "Thanks to you. Thanks to what you did." I didn't know what to say to that. Exactly 1 year after Malik's text about the funeral, I received another message. I almost didn't open it. The notification just sat there for 5 minutes and I stared at it like it was a live wire. When I finally did read it, I was shocked by what I found. "Eileen, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take responsibility for what I've done. I hurt you when you were a child who couldn't protect herself. I hurt my wife's sister. I hurt my own wife by being someone she couldn't trust. I hurt Dad by making him complicit in something evil. I hurt myself by believing that I could get away with hurting people. I didn't get away with it. You made sure of that. I know this doesn't change anything. I know you don't care about my redemption or lack thereof. But I'm telling you anyway, I see what I did. I see what I am. I'm getting help. It's not redemption. It's just the bare minimum of what I should have been doing all along. You owe me nothing. But I wanted you to know that you were right to cut me off. You were right about everything." I read it 5 times. Then I did something I didn't expect. I forwarded it to Mr. Hensworth, just like I'd forwarded the funeral text. But this time I added a note, for my records. "I'm not responding." But I wanted it documented that he finally admitted the truth. And that was that. Some people expected me to respond. To offer forgiveness or at least acknowledgement. But I'd learned something crucial. My healing didn't require his redemption. My strength didn't depend on his growth. His apology was for his benefit, not mine. I read it, I filed it away, and I moved forward. 2 years after my mother's death, I stood in the same empty Zion Baptist church where Malik had tried to erase me at her funeral. This time I wasn't attending someone's funeral. I was speaking at the inaugural gala for the Loretta Mitchell Safe Space Initiative. The church was packed. There were survivors sharing their stories. There were parents who'd finally stepped up to protect their children. There were lawyers and therapists and social workers who'd dedicated their lives to fighting the systems that protected predators. And there was my father sitting in the front row, tears streaming down his face as I spoke. My mother was a woman who failed me when I needed her most, I said to the crowd. She didn't protect me when I was hurt. She didn't believe me when I told the truth. But she spent the last 4 years of her life trying to make it right. And when she couldn't do it in person, she did it in her will. I'm not here to say that's enough. It's not. What happened to me was traumatic, and no amount of inheritance can erase that. But I am here to say that it's never too late to do better. It's never too late to choose your child over your comfort. It's never too late to face the hard truths about your failures. I looked out at the faces of survivors in the audience. You deserve to be believed. You deserve to be protected. You deserve a family that chooses you even when it's hard. And if your family doesn't choose you, know this. We will. This foundation exists so that nobody has to survive alone. The applause was deafening. After the event, people approached me. Survivors who'd found healing through our programs. Parents who'd stepped up. Family members who'd finally seen the truth and chosen accountability. Roxanne came too. She brought her sister, who hugged me and said, "Thank you for being brave enough to be angry." That line stayed with me. Because that's what I'd learned. Anger wasn't the enemy. Righteous anger, the kind that responds to injustice, that was the beginning of healing. That was what transformed pain into purpose. My mother had given me her house and her savings. But the real inheritance was her final act of protection. She'd shown me that I was worth fighting for. Even if it took her until she was dying to believe it. As I stood in that church, looking out at all the survivors we'd helped, looking at my father in the front row finally doing the work he should have done decades ago, I realized something profound. I'd won. Not in a petty way. Not in a way that required Malik's suffering or anyone's continued pain. I'd won by building something that mattered. By transforming my trauma into a shield for others. That text Malik had sent me at 2:47 a.m., the one telling me I didn't belong at my mother's funeral, it had inadvertently given me permission to finally claim my power. I was done asking for belonging. I was done hoping for protection from people who'd proven they wouldn't give it. I was too busy building sanctuary for everyone else who'd been left in the cold. And that, I realized, was the greatest inheritance of all.